Story Corner, presented by Jennifer. Thoroughbred. Book 1, A Horse Called Wonder. Chapter 8. Phew, Ashleigh said with relief. My report card's not as bad as I thought. Only 2 C's. How'd you do, Linda? She asked. I got straight A's and I got an A in gym, Linda exclaimed. You should. You're so good in tennis. Ashleigh stood up from her desk and slid her report card into her notebook. She couldn't believe it was the last day of school. Finally. The only bad part of it was that Linda was going off with her father to the New York races for the first half of the summer. I'm going to miss you, Ashleigh said. I almost wish you weren't going. No, I shouldn't say that. You'll have a great time. Yeah, and you'll have Wonder to keep you busy. Ashleigh smiled at the thought. The filly was healthy again, and all the staff in the breeding barns had shown up the day before to watch Wonder take her first walk outside since coming down with the flu. I'll be back before the end of summer anyways, Linda added. Write me and tell me all about it. I don't want to have to wait until you get back. Promise? Promise, Linda grinned. The dismissal bell rang. Ashleigh, Linda, and the other 20 kids in their homeroom jumped out of their chairs with shouts of joy. Have a good summer, everyone, the homeroom teacher, Mrs. Katz, called over the bedlam. Ashlyn and Linda grabbed their backpacks and ran for the door. No, Rory, that's not the way to groom her, Ashlyn laughed. And Wonder, stop trying to eat the brush. Ashleigh was taking her turn watching Rory. Caroline hadn't wanted to spend her whole summer babysitting, and Ashleigh didn't blame her. But Rory could be a handful. She'd only kept him in the stall with her in that early July morning by giving him the special privilege of grooming Wonder. Unfortunately, Rory's grooming methods were pretty casual. He totally ignored Wonder's head and legs, and Wonder didn't help. She thought it was a game and kept twisting her head around to nibble at the soft brush he held, and to butt his arm with her nose. Bits of bedding still clung to Wonder's legs and belly when Rory was finished, but Wonder affectionately nuzzled his ear with her soft lips. Rory went off into a fit of giggles. That tickles, Wonder. You're silly. He pushed Wonder's head away. She likes me a lot, Ashlyn, doesn't she? Uh-huh. You know, Wonder's got a big day ahead of her. Dad's decided it's time she and Holly went into the paddock with the other mares and foals. Can I lead her? He asked excitedly. I'll let you help hold the shank if you promise not to jump around too much. Here comes Dad now. Ashleigh was worried about the move. Wonder had grown since recovering from the flu. Her head was as high as Ashleigh's shoulder, but she still looked frail. Are you sure she'll be all right? She asked her father as they led the horses towards the paddock. She's so small compared to the other foals. Won't they push her around? You are beginning to sound like an overprotective mother, her father teased. It'll be an adjustment for her, but she'll be fine. She needs to be out with the other horses and learn to fend for herself. After they freed Holly and Wonder, Mr. Griffen went back to the barn, but Ashleigh and Rory stood anxiously at the paddock fences. Charlie joined them. Ashleigh could see that Wonder was terrified. She clung to Holly's side for protection as the other foals curiously approached to investigate the new arrival. All of them were several inches taller than Wonder at the shoulders, and their backs had begun to lengthen. Wonder still had the awkward, long-legged gaitness of a young foal. They nudged Wonder playfully at first, but she didn't know what to make of them. Wonder had only been around humans and Holly, and she wasn't big enough or strong enough to keep up with the other foals' roughhousing. She cowered close to Holly. Holly did what she could to protect her foal. She chased away the bullies with nips and kicks, but she could only do so much. They're going to hurt Wonder, Rory cried. Ashleigh turned quickly to Charlie for his opinion. No, they won't. She's feeling strange, but she'll catch on. Just give 'em a few minutes. But the others are so much bigger, Ashleigh said. Do you think Wonder will ever catch up? In time, and Holly will take care of her. Look, Holly had decided it was time for a drink at the water trough. Half a dozen mares were already at the trough. Holly pushed right through, laying back her ears in warning to those who didn't move. Wonder followed along close to her mother's side, and soon the mare and foal had the trough to themselves. These horses have their pecking order, Charlie explained with a grin. Holly's what you call one of the boss mares. She's not going to let any of the others get in her way, and the others know better than to mess with her. It's a good lesson for Wonder. Holly's a tough old lady. Charlie chuckled. But you want to see what's in the racing. But you want to see that in a racehorse. It's a sign that they won't let another horse get the better of them on the track. I think little Wonder may have inherited some of that fight from her mother. Really? Ashleigh asked. It was hard to believe looking at Wonder now. While Wonder had been recovering from the flu, she'd lost a lot of ground. If anything, Wonder looked more like a runt than ever. Yet, a few days later, when Ashleigh went to the paddock fence to watch, she could see that Wonder was learning how to stand up for herself. She wasn't big enough to push the other foals around, but she didn't let them push her around either. She stood her ground, and when the other foals got too rough, Wonder sent a well-aimed kick in their direction. Good for you, Ashleigh called proudly over the fence. At the sound of Ashleigh's voice, Wonder came trotting over with a whinny of greeting, and pushed her head through the top two rails of the fence. Ashleigh rubbed the filly's ears. You're still my girl, aren't you? Ashleigh's father walked up beside her. She's doing okay, isn't she? Then he added cheerfully, Come with me for a minute. I've got something to show you. Ashleigh was mystified, but her father wouldn't give her any hints as he led her around the barn towards the training area. He stopped at one of the paddocks. There were two horses inside, an Appalachian mare who had that breeder's distinct livery and white spotting, and a big, elegantly built bay horse. I finally found some riding horses for us. There you go. He smiled and pointed to the bay. Ashleigh stared at the horse, then at her father. For me? To ride? He sure is. His name is Dominator. But he looks like a thoroughbred. He is, her father laughed. An old gelding. He has been retired from racing for years. Bill thought he'd make a good mount for you. He's even-tempered and isn't going to pull any crazy stuff. Townsend's daughter used to trail ride with him before she got married. The mares are ours to ride too. Her name is Belle, but I thought you'd like to try a thoroughbred for a change. Oh, wow, I sure would, Ashleigh gasped. She'd known her father would find them some riding horses, but she never expected hers to be a thoroughbred. She was so thrilled. She didn't know what to say. April came towards the paddock grinning and carrying a saddle. "Not too bad," she called as she went to the paddock and started tacking up Dominator. "Why don't you try him out in the paddock first?" Mr. Griffin said. "Then you can take him out around the farm. But keep in sight of the barns and training area until you get used to him." "I promise." Ashleigh was already hurrying over to April and Dominator. She held out her hand to the horse and let him sniff it. Then she rubbed her hand over his neck and spoke quietly to him, letting him know she was a friend. She went to his side and slid her foot into the stirrup and mounted. Ashleigh could hardly believe she was sitting in the saddle of a thoroughbred. Now she could really practice her riding, so that when Wonder was old enough, Ashleigh would be ready to ride her. April stepped away, and Ashleigh urged the horse into a walk around the paddock. Dominator might have been old, but he still moved with smooth grace, and he'd been well trained. He was responsive to the slightest touch on the reins or pressure of Ashleigh's legs. Ashleigh loosened the reins and squeezed lightly with her legs, and Dominator broke into a trot. She took him several times around the paddock, then stopped him by the fence where her father and April were standing. She was so excited she felt butterflies in her stomach. "He's great, Dad." "Ready to head out?" her father asked. Ashleigh nodded, and her father swung open the paddock gate. "I'll be careful." "I know you will. Have fun." Her father didn't have to worry about that. As they trotted along between the white fences, horses in the paddocks lifted their heads and whinnied. A younger horse might have been distracted by the cries, but Dominator remained calm. At the crest of the hill, Ashleigh turned the horse to the right and urged him into a canter over the thick grass. Dominator's long legs seemed to eat up the ground. What a difference it made, riding a thoroughbred. Stardust had always put her heart into their rides, but her gaits had never been so smooth, her strides so powerful and effortless. The breeze lifted Ashleigh's hair as she and Dominator whipped by the white fence posts. She felt tempted to urge Dominator into a gallop, but she didn't dare push him to that speed until she was sure of the trail ahead. Even at a canter, she felt like she was flying as they swung around the bend in the pack. As they raced along, she couldn't help dreaming of the day when Wonder was fully grown. She imagined herself in the saddle, crouched low over the filly's neck, racing along at full gallop. They were still high on the crest of the hill, and below Ashleigh could see the training stables, the oval of the ring, and the green paddocks spread out around them. She felt like she was on top of the world. When the trail began to dip back down towards the barns, Ashleigh slowed Dominator and trotted him along under the canopy of trees. She no longer had a sweeping view of the farm, and wasn't exactly sure where they were, but the path they were on was well used and marked by hoof prints. She urged Dominator back into a canter, and the horse eagerly picked up his pace. As they rounded a tree-lined bend, she saw another rider canter towards them. The horse looked a lot like the colt Brad Townsend had been riding, and as they drew closer, she recognized Brad in the saddle. Ashleigh felt so happy and excited that she lifted her hand in a friendly wave and even smiled at Brad as the two horses swept past each other. She couldn't help feel a nudge of satisfaction, too, to have Brad see her on the back of a thoroughbred. She giggled when she saw his expression. He stared at her wide-eyed. He sure hadn't been expecting to see her cantering along on Dominator. But the horses were moving too quickly for him to do much more than gape at her for an instant. "That'll show you, snob," she thought as she cantered away. "I can ride, too." The space between the fences was wider here, and the ground was level. Again, Ashleigh was tempted to put Dominator into a gallop, but through a break in the trees, she saw a stable building ahead and knew they were approaching the training area. As they drew closer, she slowed Dominator to a trot, then a walk. Stable hands looked up curiously as they passed by the front of the training stable yards. Dominator perked up his ears and pranced a few steps in excitement. "You remember this from when you used to race, don't you?" Ashleigh asked. "I bet you miss having someone to take you riding." Hanging around in the paddock all the time must be getting pretty boring. One of the grooms called out to her, "That's old Dominator, isn't it?" Ashleigh nodded and smiled. "Nice to see someone riding him again, but that's a lot of horse for you." "Oh no, he's got beautiful manners. He's a great old horse." Ashleigh waved to the groom and headed Dominator away from the stables. "See you later." Her father saw her returning and came over as she dismounted near the paddock and started to untack the horse. "I can tell by your face you had a good ride." "Incredible!" Ashleigh beamed. "This was absolutely the best surprise, Dad. I'm so happy." Ashleigh was sore the night after not having ridden for so long. She soaked away her aches in a hot tub, but the ride had been worth it. All she wanted to do was practice and practice on Dominator until she was as good as the other exercise riders on the farm. Good enough to have a chance of riding Wonder. During the next few days, Ashleigh did practice until her muscles started getting into condition again, and she and Dominator were working like a pair. By the end of the week, she galloped him down the lane for the first time. As she rode back from the ride, her face was glowing from her achievement. Dominator was excited too, prancing and tossing his head. But as they reached the breeding area, Ashleigh looked over to the mares and foals paddock and suddenly pulled Dominator up. Mr. Townsend, Mr. Maddock, and her father were standing by the paddock fences looking at the foals. She nervously watched as the men walked slowly along the fence. They paused from time to time, pointing to one foal or another and talking amongst themselves. She couldn't hear what the men were saying, but she could see their faces. She saw Townsend and Maddock nodding and sometimes smiling. But when her father pointed out Wonder, they both frowned and shook their heads. Her father kept talking. Mr. Townsend shrugged, obviously unimpressed. Then they all moved further down along the fence. Ashleigh hated to ask her dad what they said, but that night at dinner she decided she had to know. "I saw Mr. Townsend and Mr. Maddock looking at the foals, Dad. They didn't like Wonder, did they?" Her father looked over, then shook his head. "I have to be honest. No, they weren't impressed. They're looking for foals with the most potential. In this business, you can't afford to take risks. Wonder doesn't look like a good risk right now. That may change." "It will." "I think you've done an outstanding job nursing the filly, but you have to be prepared for the worst, too. Townsend may eventually decide to sell Wonder off." "No, that's what Brad told me, but I thought he was just trying to show off. I didn't believe him." "Brad told you that?" Caroline said in surprise. "They can't sell Wonder," Rory cried. "She's too special." "When do they sell the horses?" Ashleigh asked in a shaky voice. "There are weanling auctions in the fall. Then, after the first of the yearling auctions start. But let's not get upset yet," Mr. Griffen said quickly. "The filly may very well stay on the farm. I just wanted you to understand the realities, Ashleigh. I don't want you to get your hopes up so high that you'll be hurt later." But Wonder really hasn't had a chance yet." "I know, but there's time. You have the rest of the summer." Ashleigh saw Caroline glance at her. She knew what Caroline was thinking, that Mr. Townsend wouldn't keep Wonder. But after nursing and caring for the filly, Ashleigh felt like Wonder belonged to her, not to Mr. Townsend. Ashleigh rushed through clearing the table and stacking the dishes in the dishwasher, then hurried outside. She wanted to talk to Charlie and see what he thought. He'd probably be in the training stables, talking to the grooms. Ashleigh checked out one of the stable blocks and didn't see him. But in the second, she found him standing outside, talking to one of the hands. It was still a big secret in the training area that Charlie had helped her with Wonder, so Ashleigh waited a few yards away. The groom had his back towards her and didn't know she was there. When Charlie lifted his head and rearranged his floppy hat, Ashleigh waved to him and motioned for him to meet her around the side of the barn. Charlie nodded lazily and kept talking to the groom. Ashleigh ran around the side of the stable and waited. A few minutes later, Charlie appeared. Ashleigh began speaking in frantic, jumbled words. "Mr. Townsend came to the paddocks this morning and looked at the foals. He and Mr. Maddock don't like Wonder, Charlie. They may sell her." Hold on, Charlie said calmly. Nobody's selling anything today. She told Charlie about the men's reaction to Wonder and what her parents had said. Like your parents told you, there's time. We won't be any decisions made for a while yet. Townsend never says anything to fall auction unless it's a mare and foal pair, and Holly's too old to sell. You won't have anything to worry about until winter, when the yearling auctions start. He shifted his hat back on his head and thought for a moment. There's a few things you could do to help Wonder along. She's 2 months now, isn't she? Old enough to start crepe feeding. What's that? We'll start giving her a little grain mix. Not too much. Your father's got some in the feed room. It's a concentration that'll get extra protein and minerals. It'll help supplement the mare's milk. They don't usually start foals on until they're 3 months old, but the filly's getting close to that and could use the extra boost. It's just a little though, to get her started. And we better tell your father what we're up to. Come on, I'll walk over there with you now. They found Ashleigh's father in his office. Charlie explained what he had in mind, and Mr. Griffin nodded. I should have thought of it myself. Go ahead, Charlie. You know where everything is, and you can show Ashleigh the right mix and quantity. Ashleigh and Charlie headed over to the feed room. The old man showed Ashleigh the mix and the amounts she should measure out. When Ashleigh and Charlie entered the stall, Wonder came over and nudged Ashleigh with affectionate playfulness. Charlie took hold of Holly's lead so she wouldn't go over to Wonder's food herself. Look what we've got for you, Ashleigh grinned as she set the bucket of feed down on the floor near Wonder. Wonder looked curiously at the bucket, then dropped her elegant little head and tentatively sniffed the contents. She gazed at Ashleigh uncertainly. Go ahead, Ashleigh laughed. It's food. You'll love it. Still, Wonder hesitated. Maybe I should give you a taste, Ashleigh said. She reached into the bucket and dipped her fingers in the soupy mix. Then she held her fingers to Wonder's mouth and waited until the filly delicately tasted the new food. Wonder immediately squealed with delight and gently nibbled Ashleigh's hand, looking for more. Good, isn't it? Ashleigh encouraged. But you'll have to eat from the bucket to get the rest. She lifted the bucket and held it under Wonder's nose. Wonder quickly understood, and in a second dipped her head into the bucket and dug in. Good girl, Ashleigh said, giving Wonder a hug. She likes it, Charlie. Yep, Charlie said, watching Wonder eat. Now we just have to wait and see if it adds any meat to her bones.